Hey guys, Aaron Cybertron Zhang here, and today I'm back with another episode of Road to Ranked, where I climb the online Series 2 VGC ladder in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet and provide live commentary as I go. In this video, I'll be trying out the team like Gavin Michaels used to win the Oceania International Championships, which was the first major internationals of Scarlet and Violet VGC. Gavin used a team centered around Palafin, as well as some really fun picks like Fang Baxcalibur, as well as Lum Berry Multiscale Dragonite in order to take home the victory. As always, I'll do a quick breakdown of the team, but if you want to just skip to the battles, check out the timestamps down in the description below. And thank you so much as always for joining me. If you enjoy, I'd really appreciate it if you consider leaving a like on the video or subscribing to the channel. It really helps me out a ton. Anyway, let's dive into things. First of all, just some quick context on this tournament. As I mentioned, it was the first major internationals in Scarlet and Violet. It was held in Australia, and there were 282 players in the Masters division. It took place in the middle of February. It was a long tournament. You had 9 rounds of Swiss on the first day, and then 5 rounds of Swiss on the second day, so 14 rounds of Swiss total, and then a top 8 single elimination bracket. So Gavin went 11-3 throughout Swiss, and then 3-0 throughout the top cut bracket to win the entire tournament overall. And just some quick background on Gavin for those that don't know. He is one of the older school VGC players, and it makes me really happy to see him win because Gavin and I kind of, competed against each other. We're in the same division in seniors in 11 and 12, and then aged up to masters at the same time as well. So he got top 8 at Worlds and Seniors in 2012, won US Nationals his first year in Masters in 2013, won 2 different California regionals in 2017 when a new generation was introduced, won Vancouver regionals last year, and then won the Oceania International Championships now. So he's actually one of the winningest VGC players in terms of just pure championship titles, and he's had so much success for over a decade through all kinds of different formats as well. And so yeah, just makes me really happy to see him back on top. An absolutely amazing player, and this team I think is incredible as well. So you can see the rest of the teams from this tournament linked down in the description below, and yeah, there's a lot of diversity in the end between a lot of the top performing teams. So yep, that's it for the context for this tournament. Let's actually break down the team. First of all, a huge thank you and congratulations to Gavin for 1, winning the international championships, and 2, making his team public as soon as he won the tournament as well, so I could try it out. It's a really fun team, and I've thoroughly enjoyed playing with it. And so, yeah, as always, rental and paste are included. Check out the description below. And question of the day, I want to know what your favorite thing about this team is. For me, I think that it really opened my eyes to how good Dragonite and Baxcalibur can be in the format, and I think the Dragonite set in particular is really fun. So that'd be my answer, but let me know yours in the comment section below. Now, the first Pokemon to talk about, I think, has to be Palafin. This Palafin is pretty straightforward. This is how a lot of top players are utilizing Palafin. Sometimes you'll see close combat over Haze if you want a slightly better matchup into steel types like King Gambit. But generally, the idea is to do a ton of damage with Mystic Water plus Wave Crash or Jet Punch. Haze here primarily exists for Dondozo, but you can also use it for other Pokemon that want to boost their stats, like Nasty Plot Goldengo, for example. And in general, it can just be kind of a nuisance for your opponent to deal with if they have setup-oriented strategies. The main thing with Palafin, of course, is in order to really get maximum value out of it, you're going to often want to switch out immediately and then bring it back out so that it's fully switched out forms. And it's pretty easy to do that with this team because you have a lot of defensive switch-ins and a lot of good bulk across the board, including the Amoonguss and the Iron Hands in particular. And so the main thing about Palafin is just figuring out how to position it, often so that you can sweep with it in the end game. If you can get rid of the Pokemon that resist water early on, for example, then Mystic Water plus Wave Crash plus Water Terra in an end game is just absolutely terrifying. And so with Palafin, it often makes sense to lead it with something like Iron Hands, for example, because you can just go for Fake Out, switch out Palafin, and then bring it back out later on in the battle. Now, naturally, Palafin already does a lot of damage with its water type attacks, but it can do even more when Pelipper sets up the rain for it. This is a really straightforward Pelipper. Throughout Scarlet and Violet, I feel like we saw, like bulky Pelipper with Damp Rock, but this kind of reminds me of old school Pelipper, which is max speed, max special attack, focus sash, and the main idea of is to just, enable Pelipper or enable Palafin with the rain, but also just deal a lot of damage with Pelipper. So yeah, the key thing here, of course, is that you're not going to be as bulky, and you're not going to have like 8 turns of rain because you don't have Damp Rock, but I think it totally makes sense with this team. And Flying Terra here, as well as Water Terra, is more for offensive potential with this team, as Pelipper isn't going to stick around as long as some of the other bulkier Pelipper sets that exist. So Pelipper Palafin also a lead that you can go with. Don't discount the amount of damage that you can just do with Jet Punch even before you transform forms, right? Like base attack of 70 plus Mystic Water, same type attack bonus, Terra, Rain Boost, like all of that can add up fairly quickly, right? Especially if you're playing something super frail like a Fluttermane without Focus Sash, for example. So it's one thing to keep in mind. So after the Pelipper and Palafin, you've got Dragonite. Now, this Dragonite, I think, is, as I mentioned, really interesting to me. It's a Lum Berry Multiscale set with Extreme Speed, Terra Blast, Ice Spinner, and Protect. it's kind of just like a strong utility Dragonite. You've got Terra Blast with the Flying Terra to deal massive amounts of damage, especially to things that are weak to it, like Amoonguss, for example, or Volcarona. You've got Ice Spinner to, one, do super effective damage into certain things, but also, two, to get rid of Psychic Terrain, which is really valuable because, as you'll notice, not a single Pokemon on this team resists or is immune to Psychic, and there's no Wide Guard either, so NDD plus Armarouge otherwise could actually be kind of annoying to go up against. But with Multiscale plus Ice Spinner, one of the things you can do against NDD Armarouge is just like protect one of your Pokemon and Ice Spinner, or just Ice Spinner and attack immediately. Go with like Dragonite Baxcalibur, for example. And so, yeah, I think that's cool. And finally, Extreme Speed just does a lot of damage, especially with Dragonite's base attack, even without a normal Terra here. Like, you're not kind of committing to solely using Extreme Speed. So I found this set to be really valuable utility wise, and it's not something that I really had on my radar as much. And the Lum Berry is really valuable in getting rid of potential Will-O-Wisp burns, for example, or any other status conditions like Spore from Amoonguss or Brute Bonnet, for example. So it's just a really fun set that has a lot of good coverage into a lot of Pokemon in the format. Next Pokemon is Baxcalibur. Now, this Baxcalibur is cool because it actually has Dragon Fang rather than Loaded Dice. A lot of players have been using Loaded Dice early on with Baxcalibur, but with Dragon Fang and Glaive Rush and this amount of attack investment, like, you can get a one-hit knockout onto Iron Bundle. And it's funny because Iron Bundle doesn't really seem like it's a really bulky Pokemon, but it has an incredible base defense stat. And to be able to just bring Baxcalibur out, not really care about Icy Wind, Freeze Dry, or Hydro Pump, and then get a one-hit knockout in return with Glaive Rush is amazing. And if they're Focus Sash, for example, you can obviously just Glaive Rush into Ice Shard. And so the Baxcalibur is really strong into teams that just generally have like relatively frail Pokemon that also can't threaten Baxcalibur for a one-hit knockout. Poison Terra here is pretty interesting, but it's valuable against things like Fluttermane, for example. And the main thing is against Fluttermane, you can just Terra and then Ice Cold Crash into Ice Shard, for example. So Baxcalibur is super strong, especially into a Pokemon that just, aren't immune to Dragon type attacks, for example, as the Dragon Fang boosted Glaive Rush is so powerful. Finally, to round out things, you've got Amoonguss. This is a Citrus Berry Amoonguss set. Pretty standard moves, but the one thing to call out here is that it actually has Steel Terra. Steel Terra is interesting, right? It means that you're actually still weak to Fire-type attacks, but part of the thing about this team is that you already have a Pelipper on the team, and with Pelipper, you can get rid of your Fire-type weakness anyway, and so it's like, you don't need another Terra like Water or Fire on top of it, and Steel gives you some unique coverage against other Terra types, for example, right? Or against other offensive types, and so, yeah, I haven't actually really seen Steel Amoonguss that much, but I thought it was interesting on this team. It's one of the first times I've actually seen Steel Amoonguss. Finally, to round out the team, you've got Iron Hands. This is a pretty classic Assault Vest set. The main thing to note is that you've got Grass Terra, and so that's really valuable in, one, not being put to sleep by things like Amoonguss and Brute Bonnet, and two, ignoring their Rage Powders as well. Volt Switch synergizes nicely with this team, as you can Volt Switch into Palafin or, find ways to pivot your Pokemon in and out. And so, yeah, use that for positioning, and obviously Close Combat and Wire Charge are just really strong attacks. The Iron Hands here also has a little bit of speed investment, and so you essentially speed creep any other Iron Hands that don't have speed investment, and King Gambit as well. That's a pretty big benchmark to hit because a lot of King Gambits just don't run any speed investment, and threatening it with a one-hit knockout with Close Combat or forcing it to Terra is really nice for this team. So yeah. In terms of modes with how you can play with this team, I'd honestly recommend you just watch the VODs of Gavin playing in the International Championships, because I think he can do it better justice than I ever could describe. But some modes that I enjoyed playing with, for example, Iron Hands plus Palafin with Pelipper and a fourth in the back, Fake Out, and just pivot out Palafin and then, try to sweep with it in the end game. Also with Iron Hands, like, don't always be tempted to click Fake Out on turn one. This thing can just do a lot of damage with Wild Charge and Close Combat immediately, especially into things like opposing Iron Bundles and Fluttermane, so that's one thing to keep in mind. You can also just go with a combination of like Iron Hands Dragonite, Iron Hands Baxcalibur, for example. Amoonguss, I generally often like if, one, I think I can get a valuable Spore off or two. Don't also discount Amoonguss's ability to heal its teammates up with Pollen Puff. I think that's actually one of the main reasons you want to consider bringing it as well. And so this team doesn't really have that much setup, right? It's mainly just let me aim to do as much damage as possible. And one of the main things to play towards, I think, is a late game Palafin sweep where you get rid of the threats to Palafin early and then close out the game. But Baxcalibur can also be a very effective late game sweeper. So yeah. Anyway, that's it for the team. Let me just quickly touch on some weaknesses. So the first thing I want to mention is this team fundamentally is really strong, and of course it just won internationals, right? But the player still has to execute the team properly, and that's often what kind of takes these really strong teams to the next level, is watching a player who has really understood all the ins and outs of the team and knows exactly what Pokemon to bring in what matchup. And so, for example, I just started trying out the team, and I think in a lot of the losses, it wasn't because I didn't have any tools to win the battle, it was more because I didn't really understand how to execute my strategies properly. And for example, would bring the wrong Pokemon in team preview, or didn't really know how to play against like a specific Pokemon or strategy. So that's one thing to keep in mind as you utilize this team, right? It is very hard, obviously, to pilot it to the same degree or a close degree as Gavin initially did. But I want to caveat with that because I think the team itself just is so strong across the board. But I'll mention some things that have given me trouble while playing with the team personally in practice games. I think the first thing is, obviously, this team is a little bit more reliant on physical attackers in Baxcalibur, Palafin, Dragonite, and Iron Hands. And so ways to just decrease physical damage output in general can be fairly valuable, especially because I think this team often does like to try to get big one-hit knockouts, especially with Glaive Rush from Dragon Fang Baxcalibur, as well as obviously Mystic Water, Terra Water boosted Wave Crash. And so, yeah, like having really physically defensive Pokemon can be valuable in itself. I think Iron Bundle's an interesting Pokemon, right? Baxcalibur actually kind of exists on this team because one of the reasons is that it can just get a one-hit KO onto Iron Bundle, but a well-conserved Iron Bundle can be pretty scary because Freeze Dry is just pretty good into a lot of the Pokemon. Iron Hands and Baxcalibur are both really quite good into Bundle. You can Hurricane it, you can Spore it, and so Bundle being as frail as it is doesn't necessarily like have great setup into this team, but I do think that, for example, if you are able to conserve your Iron Bundle or other Water-type Pokemon in the late game, Palafin might struggle a little bit more because Palafin would love to just come out and keep spamming Wave Crash, but that's easier said than done, right? And so, for example, any Pokemon that is really physically defensive or especially like immune or resist water type damage in particular can make it a lot harder for Palafin to sweep in the end game. So that's one thing to keep in mind. I also think one thing is obviously Palafin is a little bit constricted in the sense that if you want to transform, you have to switch it out. And so you as a player going up against it can try to take advantage of that and angle for like aggressive targets to eliminate knockout whenever, you know, is switching in for Palafin. So you want to keep that in mind as well. I think other things that I've run into that's been scary. I specifically ran into Nasty Plot, Water, Terra, Life Orb, Golden Go, which is a set that I actually used on the channel on a Houndstone team recently. And it was that exact team. And my opponent played it super well and essentially crushed me in like 2 to 3 turns, and that was because I didn't bring Iron Hands into the battle, and so I think I had like Dragonite, Baxcalibur, Palafin, and Pelipper, and essentially I led in a way that I had no pressure against Golden Go immediately on turn 1. Golden Go gets a Nasty Plot off, and then I was worried about it was like Iron Bundle plus Golden Go, and so I was worried about Iron Bundle, and Iron Bundle was low, so I tried to just like Jet Punch it. Golden Go ended up just, you know, clicking Shadow Ball, Life Orb at +2 into Palafin after I transformed and got a one-hit knockout onto me. So that's a pretty specific set, but that honestly gave me a ton of trouble because it was like, okay, pre-Terra, what's my best way of dealing with Golden Go? We don't have any ways to really threaten it with a big one-hit KO other than like Palafin, who had already transformed with Mystic Water, Wave Crash, maybe boosted by Rain, for example. But then I also had to respect the option of Water Terra on Golden Go, which is pretty scary. So I spent a lot of time talking about that one specific mon, but yeah, I just like stood no chance given my poor lead and my lack of bringing Iron Hands. So Iron Hands obviously will help out a little bit, especially if they're Water Terra, but that's one thing in particular. And then opposing weather can cause some problems, although, you know, Palafin doesn't actually need to rely on Pelipper necessarily to win battles, so keep that in mind. But yeah, those are a couple things I've run into. Let's get into the games. All right, we've got Indeedee and Armarouge, Iron Hands, Sylveon, Gyarados, as well as Great Tusk. So, first thing to note is that, like, there's a fair amount of priority on this team, right? Fake Out from Iron Hands, Jet Punch, Ice Shard, Extreme Speed. It's like, if Psychic Terrain is up, I can't get as much value out of those, but I could break the Psychic Terrain using Ice Spinner from Dragonite. What are their answers into Palafin? It's Defensive Terra, Armarouge, and Gyarados Intimidate. If I were them, I'd prioritize that Gyarados. Intimidate's going to be really strong for them here, in my opinion. Iron Hands is going to be super weak into, like, Great Tusk, for example. I could defensively Terra, obviously. I think I want to lead Palafin so I could just swap it out immediately. I actually like the idea of Dragonite here because of Ice Spinner and then Pelipper plus Baxcalibur in the back. Let's try this out. Yeah, my general goal here is basically to, one, KO the Gyarados as quickly as I can. If Gyarados is knocked out and they can't Cycle and Intimidates, I think it just completely opens the game for Palafin to sweep the rest of their team. Like, Water Terra boosted Wave Crashes are just so powerful. You're gonna go with Indeedee and Armarouge. Okay, that works for me. Yeah, this is interesting. Like, I could Ice Spinner to start immediately. Psychic Seed on Indeedee, no major surprise there. I think, like, going for a Protect turn 1, actually, and going for Ice Spinner is pretty strong. I'm curious if we Beta Follow Me or even better an Armarouge Terra. And we are seeing a Terra here, so... Getting a Terra... Oh! Huh? Okay. I did not expect that. Steel Terra Indeedee. That's really cool. Palafin starts off with the Protect. Okay, they just go for Follow Me. Ice Spinner gets rid of terrain. Cool. And they just go to Expanding Force. Okay, that works. Pelipper switch in there actually probably would have worked out better for me. They are Life Orb on the Armarouge. Yeah, so with that, I don't mind going to Pelipper now, especially given that you committed your Terra to Indeedee. Dragonite's looking a lot better now. Or sorry, Palafin with the Wave Crash is looking a lot better. Although there's still the threat of the Gyarados in the back for them, right? So, pivot on to Pelipper here. I think I want to Protect here. Yeah. Like, the goal is still not to knock out Gyarados, right? Which has not hit the field yet. Steel Terra on Indeedee was interesting. It's not that valuable defensively into the... like, the Pelipper or the Palafin, but it's actually quite annoying for Dragonite to deal with right now. Okay, and they go for another Follow Me. No surprise there. Nice targeting so far in this game. They've clicked Expanding Force basically onto the right Pokemon both times. It's pretty well done. I'm still fine with that, though. Especially with Hydro Pump pressure now. And Baxcalibur in the back. I'd really like to knock out Indeedee here, so I don't mind clicking Hydro Pump. Oh, with Psychic State, it probably doesn't KO, though, right? I guess I'll force the Follow Me out from them. Hydro Pump into you. And Extreme Speed. I guess it could be Weak Armor, technically. And Hydro Pump should KO it anyway. So Extreme Speed Indeedee instead. Yep, they just go for Follow Me, though. That's fine. Okay, E-Speed doesn't do that much. Hydro Pump doesn't miss, which is quite good for us. Okay. And they just click Expanding Force again. Works for me. It's definitely been an interesting start to the battle, especially like the lack of Trick Room from their end, I think is a little surprising. So on one hand, I can go into Palafin here. On the other, I could go into Baxcalibur, which would be faster than the Dragonite. I think I'd rather go into Palafin first here. You'd expect them to go for Follow Me, plus another Expanding Force. Maybe switch out into Gyarados, potentially. Wonder if Terra Blast gets the knockout onto this. They should Follow Me with Indeedee here and then Expanding Force into one of the two slots. I'm fine clicking Protect here. And Extreme Speeding into the Indeedee, so then next turn I can Extreme Speed plus Wave Crash. Armor switches, so that's probably Gyarados coming out finally. Yep. Okay. Yeah, it's honestly a really big threat to our team. Since we're mainly physical here and the Pelipper was already eliminated. Okay, Indeedee just goes for a Protect, so this turn's kind of null. I think that's okay, though. Because now what I can do is just, Wave Crash into the Indeedee slot covers for practically everything. I'm just kind of scared about, like, a Thunder Wave from Gyarados, but if they go for it, so be it. I'll Wave Crash in case they try to get fancy and switch out, and then I'll switch Baxcalibur in. Like, I'm using 3 physical Pokemon right now, which is what makes this a little bit harder, but the reality is that, like, they've already committed their Terra, I have more offense than they do, and I'm generally a little faster paced than they are as well. And even if they're Dragon Dance Gyarados, I think Baxcalibur is pretty good defensively into the Gyarados, thanks to the Water Ice, or sorry, Ice Dragon typing. But he just goes for Follow Me. Okay, works for me. Confirm Palafin's faster. Wave Crash gets the KO. And now Baxcalibur is really well positioned. I do think it was interesting my opponent never clicked Trick Room, but I can kind of understand why, especially if the Armarouge doesn't have Trick Room, because Indeedee felt like it was forced to keep going for Follow Me to essentially protect their team, right? So, yeah, they get Thunder Wave off into the Palafin, but honestly, that's okay. Like, Jet Punch should still KO Armarouge, and we should still be faster, obviously, thanks to the priority. And they bring out Iron Hands as their last one. Okay. Iron Hands as your last one. Rain is expiring, which actually is a little awkward here. Part of my question is, how fast is their Iron Hands? Expect them to actually outpace me now. I think here, though, I'm decently content clicking Jet Punch into Iron Hands, and actually just straight up going for Glaive Rush into it as well. Yeah, they don't go for Fake Out. Cool. Jet Punch already does a ton. Beautiful. So basically, I figured there they might be tempted to just try to KO the Palafin with the Wild Charge. And if they click Fake Out into Baxcalibur, that's fine. You maybe get a Thunder Wave off, but then I at least get to... get Jet Punch off and do around 40% into the Iron Hands. And then what I could do the next turn is actually just Water Terra, and then like Ice Shard plus Jet Punch. Although actually with Other Rain, I'm not sure that gets the KO. Probably doesn't. But bring out Armarouge. -1 attack. I'll probably want to switch Baxcalibur out here. Part of the interesting thing right now is like who I want to Terra. Like Dragonite with Flying Terra. Terra Blast is actually probably our best bet. I'm not even sure you can KO the Palafin right now. So I'm happy to just Wave Crash and then switch Baxcalibur out into Dragonite. And even if you double up onto Palafin, then I position in Dragonite safely, right? And then I get the switch in back into Baxcalibur, and Baxcalibur just threatens with so much offense. Yeah, the main thing here is a Paraflinch from Waterfall plus Expanding Force. Yeah, I mean, Expanding Force doesn't really change, just mainly Waterfall and Flinch chance. Nice. No Para, no Flinch. Palafin's clutch, gets Wave Crash, KOs the Armarouge. Beautiful. Yeah, I'm really happy about this game in the sense that I got to feature a lot of the cool things about this team, like especially Dragonite with that Ice Spinner is so crucial into the Indeedee Armarouge matchup. Now we can just go for a Jet Punch for a little bit of chip damage, Terra, Flying U, and Terra Blast into Gyarados. And with Lum Berry, I don't have to worry about Thunder Wave, and yeah, they end up forfeiting. So this matchup was pretty scary, mainly because I think Gyarados was actually a really big problem, given that our team was mainly physical. Normally, I would bring Iron Hands into a matchup against Gyarados, but I didn't do so in this matchup because they had Indeedee Armarouge. Iron Hands just doesn't feel that great into it, right? Because, like, I'm weak to Expanding Force. If I Grass Terra, then I'm weak to the Armor Cannon from the opposing side. And so I think, like, the early game was interesting, right? Because, yeah, I felt like if Trick Room went up, things might have been a little bit tougher for me, but once again, I can understand why my opponent was playing the way they did, because they were like, okay, at least Armarouge is still doing pretty good damage, and also their Expanding Force targets were spot on, right? Like, even after getting rid of Psychic Terrain, they did make the correct target selection turns 1 and 2, so that was pretty impressive. But overall, the main thing is we were able to snowball kind of the end game with the pure amount of offense we had, and yeah, shoutouts to Dragonite for getting rid of the terrain and slowly chipping things away, and Baxcalibur for putting on a huge amount of offensive pressure. I think the main turn that won me this game was when Iron Hands ended up not clicking Fake Out. I was able to just double up onto it for a KO, so yeah. Okay, this is, I think, the rank number 1 team that I featured on this channel before. If you want to see me try out that team, I'll link it down in the description below, but basically it was a really strong team featuring, yeah, Salt Vest King Gambit with Flying Terra, Focus Sash Glamora, Booster Energy on the Moth, Life Orb on the Fluttermane. I think this is easily going to be, like, Palafin's easily going to be the most important Pokemon for us, because Jet Punch in general is really strong, and it also has Haze for Dondozo. So I definitely want to prioritize the Palafin. The question is who else I want to bring into the battle. Dragonite, I think, is a no-go for us in this one. Baxcalibur is interesting. It honestly might be the top 4. Like, I could get away with leading. I'm actually interested in Amoonguss Palafin. Because this pressures Spore immediately with Iron Hands and Pelipper in the back. I think the main thing is I'm thinking about bringing Baxcalibur as well because the pure amount of offense from it is really good. It's also Dragon Terror on the Dondozo from the opposing end. Dragonite's definitely a no. I think you can make a really good argument for Baxcalibur, actually. I don't have enough time to lock it in, but I actually think Baxcalibur Palafin lead was stronger here because I pressure with Ice Shard plus Jet Punch immediately, and I think that combo is actually really hard for my opponent to deal with. So I'm going to go with the Amoonguss route in this one, but I think Baxcalibur was really strong as well. Especially because like Glaive Rush is really good into Dondozo, and with this, like I actually have a little bit less offense, but I do have more defense to work with. Okay, so they go with Iron Moth plus the Flutter Mane. It's not really too surprising. Easy for me to switch out into Pelipper right now. This is actually really interesting because I have Steel Terra, and so if you're my opponent, you could go for Acid Spray plus Shadow Ball into Amoonguss. Or you could just go for like Heat Wave / Overheat plus Shadow Ball. I actually think I want to commit my Terra to Amoonguss here, just to get a Spore off. Yeah, so I'm going to bring in Pelipper and Terra Steel here and Spore. I'll go for Spore onto the Flutter Mane. Mainly because Flutter Mane's the bigger offensive tool for my opponent out of these two. I think where things would have been interesting is if I had gone for the Bax plus the Palafin lead, you know, do I just double up onto Flutter Mane immediately? Does that get the knockout? Because it is very bulky Flutter Mane on the opposing end. But yeah, the idea behind this play is this covers for Acid Spray. If you go for Heat Wave Shadow Ball or Overheat Shadow Ball, I would expect to survive the turn with the Amoonguss, and getting a single Spore off in this game, I think, just changes things dramatically in my favor. Yeah, they just go for Heat Wave. That's fine. So then the Terra wasn't necessarily, it wasn't necessary, but it's fine. The idea behind the Terra here is to cover for Acid Spray plus Shadow Ball. Now I get Spore off. Perfect. Yeah, this is totally fine. Okay. Given that, now I can switch back out into Palafin and Spore into Iron Moth. I just wanted to make sure I got a Spore off on turn 1, essentially, because in this matchup, like, my opponent's team is fairly fast-paced and offensive, and so if I can put things to sleep and get Palafin back in safely with Rain Up, I'll be better positioned. Yeah, so they Acid Spray, which is fine. Flutter Mane stays asleep. I think my main question is how much Jet Punch does to the Flutter Mane, since I can't Terra here. Because I want to Jet Punch on Pollen Puff, but I am a little bit nervous of like they survive and get the one-turn wait, because it is very defensive. Flutter Mane on the opposing side. The odds are overwhelmingly in my favor here, though. I guess not that overwhelmingly. Okay, I'm going to go for Jet Punch and Pollen Puff. Iron Moth switches, that's fine. Into Glamora. Okay. They actually try to protect there, so we get lucky, let they stay asleep. Get Jet Punch off. Okay, that was enough for a KO, so we were fine. This play I made then always works. Although, like, since they ended up going for a Protect there and didn't get it, like, I got a little lucky there in the sense that, like, they were able to get a defensive switch in here with the Glamora. This is where the Amoonguss turning into Steel has actually been a little bit awkward for me. I haven't benefited at all from it throughout the course of the battle so far, but I don't mind going for it just to cover for turn 1 because being able to get a Spore off was honestly such a big deal. So they bring out the King Gambit, which is fine. It's pretty safe for me to just Rage Powder here, but I could also, say, Protect Palafin and then switch out into some either Pokemon in the back right now. Honestly, with Wave Crash pressure here, I think I'm happy to just Wave Crash into the King Gambit and then just go for a Rage Powder here. Oh, they go for Spiky Shield. Okay, cool. I feel like this should win me the match then, because King Gambit is Assault Vested. I would expect to just one-shot it with Wave Crash right now. Okay, there's our Wave Crash. Beautiful. Yeah, this is a whole Palafin sweep. This is what I was saying in team preview though, right? I felt like Palafin was going to easily be the most important Pokemon in the matchup. Not only because it had Haze for Dondozo and Tatsugiri, but because offensively into the rest of the team is just so strong. Yeah, and Iron Moth here has to take a turn of sleep, so we get a guaranteed knockout onto that with Wave Crash as well. So we'll just go for Wave Crash, Wave Crash, and Rage Powder once again. And it's Ground Terra on Glamora, so I don't have to worry about it going for a Grass Terra here and surprising me. So, yep. That is the strength of Palafin, ladies and gentlemen. And the beautiful thing here is, like, even their best answer in a Palafin, which was Dondozo and Tatsugiri, like, we have pretty good answers to, thanks to the Haze. So, yeah. I think the main thing on this first turn was I just, like, figured if I could get a single Spore off, I could snowball this game pretty quickly. And so, once again, that's kind of why I went for Steel Terra, even though it didn't end up being necessary. I was kind of worried about them going for Acid Spray plus Shadow Ball onto the Amoonguss slot. And so I just wanted to, yeah, try to make sure that I could get one Spore off, and after we got a single Spore off, things managed to look a lot better. I do think in this game, like, it would have been interesting because obviously the Fluttermane could have just woken up immediately, and we were lucky that they stayed asleep for, you know, more than a turn. And so that essentially, I would say, like, sealed up the game more or less. The main thing is, I think my opponent could have considered bringing Iron Moth out first over the King Gambit, and then they went for Spiky Shield as well. But at that point, because I knew it was Assault Vest King Gambit, it was really easy for me to just Wave Crash that slot. I guess the thing with Iron Moth is actually it would have been a guaranteed knockout onto that slot as well. So yeah, like the pressure of Amoonguss Spore in this game was just so good for us. And with Moth and Fluttermane, the goal is to try to knock out your opponent before they can get an attack off. But in this case, we had enough bulk to survive with our Pokemon and be able to put them to sleep, which was really nice. But yeah, that is the strength of Palafin. Okay, another Gyarados. Wow. Really did not expect to see 2 in 3 games, but hey, if you're looking for a Pokemon that can give this team trouble, I honestly think Gyarados is one of them, so that's cool. Not so cool for me, though. This feels like a strong game for Iron Hands, personally, especially because of its matchup in a Gyarados. Kind of worried about that Volcarona. This is a tricky matchup. Baxcalibur feels really strong. I am really worried about Will-O-Wisp from Volcarona, though, so I actually kind of want to lead, like, Dragonite. I probably drop Amoonguss in this one. Do I drop Pelipper? That feels so weird. Maybe it's Palafin that I drop. Like, I could go Dragonite plus Iron Hands, Pelipper, Baxcalibur. I think I want the Palafin. I don't know. Baxcalibur's offense is so good here. I feel like I have to bring it. I'll go with Iron Hands. So I'm actually gonna drop Pelipper in this one, which feels really bizarre because Pelipper does have Hurricane into Amoonguss and Hydro Pump into Volcarona and Tailwind, but I don't know. I think like Palafin just once it transforms is just so powerful. Also, one thing that I could do is use Haste to get rid of the attack drop from Gyarados. I didn't talk about that in the previous battle against Gyarados, but yeah. Okay, Volcarona and Iron Hands. Well, this is interesting. Are you willing to click Fake Out on a Dragonite? Do you know about multi-skill? The safest play, honestly, is to just double protect on turn 1. But I also don't mind hard switching Palafin out immediately into my own Iron Hands. I really want to just Terra and Terra Blast, but if like they actually know about the multi-scale, and given that this team just won a major tournament, they should know about it if they've, you know, followed like the weekend's tournament. I'm not going to risk it. Okay. I'm going to just protect and switch into Iron Hands turn 1. This is generally safe. The only thing that really scares me here is if they just straight up went for Will-O-Wisp immediately onto the Palafin slot, which I could see as a possibility. I think if I had Pelipper here, though, you know, that would be a good opportunity to switch it in, so maybe they don't go for it out of respect for Pelipper. Could be a Quiver Dance. It is Quiver Dance, yeah. No Fake Out from Iron Hands. This might be Volt Switch or just a Wild Charge into the hands. Good play. Okay. This turn is interesting because, like, you would expect Volcarona to maybe protect here as Iron Hands tries to do something. I'm interested in going for, like, Terra Blast, but instead of targeting Volcarona, I actually want to target Iron Hands and try to KO this quickly. Yeah, especially because I don't think Volcarona scares Dragonite that much, and I really would expect Volcarona to protect here, so I'm going to double up onto their Iron Hands right now. But if I just went Terra turn 1 and Terra Blast into Volcarona, you know, we'd be in amazing shape right now. So they're not going for a Terra here. I don't know. I feel like not going for Protect here would really catch me off guard. But since I have Multiscale, even if they don't, it's fine. Beautiful. So now this next turn is interesting because if you're my opponent, it's like you now know I've gone for Flying Terra. Now the downside of going for Flying Terra like this is, of course, their Iron Hands now can deal super effective damage to me. That's so much damage from Terra Blast. That's really nice. So the question is, like, with Volcarona, do you defensively Terra, for example? I could Terra Blast into you. And just close combat into their Iron Hands. Could be Gyarados switching in right now for Iron Hands is the main thing, I would say. And like, so like part of me wants to double up onto their Volcarona. I don't know if I really need to show it that much respect, though. Okay, I'm down to Terra Blast and close combat into Iron Hands. Yeah, they just go for Fiery Dance. That's fine by me. Cool. So they don't go for a Terra. You can see with Multiscale, even with them being at +1, not really that scary. I guess it could be Sash Volk here, but it's not. Nice. Mainly curious if their Iron Hands has any speed investment, because if not, this is just a double KO. Nice. Yeah, beautiful. Let's go Dragonite, putting in the work. I'm surprised to not see Gyarados come out yet, but I wonder if they even brought it then. Even if they do have Gyarados at this point, though, I think they're in a really tough position. So Mungus comes out, okay, and what is that? Fluttermane, okay. Fluttermane could still be really scary. Yeah, I still have to be really careful here. Like, you could just go, like, Life Orb. I mean, I don't know if it's Focus Sash. Sash wasn't on Volcarona. No Booster Energy. Could be Specs. Could be Life Orb. I don't know where the Terra is quite yet, either. I want to just protect Dragonite and Wild Charge into Fluttermane, because if Amoonguss doesn't go for Rage Powder here, no Terra from their end. If it doesn't Rage Powder, Wild Charge could potentially just one-shot Fluttermane. Okay. What is Fluttermane going for? Dazzling Gleam is fine. Also, to see Dazzling makes me think, yeah, you can't KO Dragonite easily next turn. Nice. We survive. I was going to say that felt like Specs damage, but then the crit came out. Okay, so it is Sash on the Fluttermane, but that's fine. This game is still not over, though. Like, I really think Fluttermane does have the potential to come back right now, so let me think about things. Like, I don't think Shadow Ball actually KOs Dragonite, so given that, I'm thinking I can just switch out into Baxcalibur and double up onto Amoonguss with Glaive Rush plus Terra Blast, which would cover for most Terras Amoonguss could be. If I go into Palafin, it's not as effective into Amoonguss. Yeah, I'm fine going to Baxcalibur here. Especially given the Dazzling Gleam reveal. So I want to just Terra Blast Amoonguss and go for Glaive Rush onto it, since I know you just protect it, and it covers for a Terra from the Amoonguss. Okay, it's going to be Fluttermane going for Terra into Fairy, sure. Increase your damage output of Dazzling. I still don't expect Dazzling Gleam to KO either here, though, with the bulk that we have. Yep, Amoonguss does Rage Powder. Good play. There's Dazzling Gleam. It does manage to actually get the one-hit knockout into Baxcalibur, but that's because it crits me. Okay. So 2 crits so far from Fluttermane. If there's any way to come back, it is from that, I guess. But I think it's fine. Terra Blast here. Let's see if it's enough to get the one-hit KO. Beautiful. Yep. Now I just bring out Palafin and Jet Punch. So it was kind of scary, though, right? But the Dragonite was just so good for us in this game. I knew Dragonite would be, like, good in this game. I didn't realize it would be so good, though. It's been amazing. Yeah, so now we can just Terra Blast and Jet Punch. I think the main thing in this game was that the Volcarona just wasn't really able to do much for my opponent. And I think one of the key turns was also getting so much free damage onto their Iron Hands with Fake Out plus the Terra Blast plus them and being slower with Iron Hands. Like, the combination of all of that made this really difficult for my opponent, in my opinion. So, yeah. But Dragonite putting on a really, really good performance here. And part of why I wanted to bring it is because I figured, okay, between the combination of having the Lum Berry, which can help out against Thunder Wave from Gyarados or Will-O-Wisp from Volcarona, plus a strong Terra Blast, it just feels pretty good into my opponent's team, but it was even better than I would have expected going into the battle. So, yeah, really happy to put on a strong performance from it in particular. Okay, we've got Corviknight, Torkoal, Dragonite, Roaring Moon, Iron Bundle, and Fluttermane. What would I bring if I were my opponent? I would definitely bring Torkoal, Bundle. Man, Corviknight could actually be a pretty big problem for us. I think I really like Iron Hands here. I honestly really like Baxcalibur as well. So Iron Hands plus Bax, Pelipper, Palafin. But I don't know if, like, I should probably lead Palafin so I can switch it out immediately. Change forms. I generally don't mind this, but I think Fluttermane lead I do have to respect. You know what's interesting, though? If they lead Fluttermane, I could protect Palafin, Wild Charge it, and then just Jet Punch it next turn. Like, you don't necessarily always just have to switch out Palafin immediately. Amoonguss is a little tougher to bring into this matchup, given Dragonite, Torkoal, Corviknight, and Iron Bundle. Like, they just have a lot of Pokemon that can threaten me with super effective damage. But the thing is, with a defensive Terra on Amoonguss, like, you can always make an argument for it, honestly. And then I think Dragonite's just not very good in this one. Terra Blast isn't really super strong to any of my opponent's Pokemon. Ice Spinner doesn't really get rid of any terrains, although it's decent damage in a couple of things on their end. So it's one of those matches where I think like Amoonguss and Dragonite honestly both make some sense, especially in a best of 3, but in a best of 1, I think like the 4 I'm bringing just feel like the strongest options covering for anything they could bring. Bundle plus the Fluttermane. Yeah, this to me feels like probably a Protect Wild Charge turn 1. Booster energy on Bundle. Okay. I guess the question is, who do I want to Wild Charge, actually? They'd also have to be worried about Fake Out right now going into this, right? I am down to Wild Charge immediately into Fluttermane and just Protect on turn 1. Okay, no Terra, no Protect from their end, so not a bad start, I would say. Nice. They freeze dry into Palafin, it's already really good. And they move Blast. Okay, so they split their damage there. That's fine. I could have considered a defensive Terra there immediately to start the battle. I wonder if that was worth it, honestly. Maybe. Pretty easy for me to just Jet Punch into this now. Wild Charge into the Bundle. It's a pretty safe play. The thing is, I could capitalize off a potential protect from Flutter Mane by switching Palafin out into Pelipper right now. But we do have Torkoal. I don't know, though. Jet Punch is so obvious. Wild Charge. Yeah, I'm actually going to take this as an opportunity to transform. It's a little bit risky because they could just straight up Moonblast Iron Hands and Freeze Dry again. But even in that case, I don't think it's the end of the world because I get a free switch into Baxcalibur. And then I can Ice Shard. Nicely done. They don't go for the Protect with Flutter Mane. Although, like, the main thing is I think that's really risky, right? Because if I go for the obvious play of Jet Punch plus the Wild Charge, that's just a double KO. I'm not sure Gleam KOs Iron Hands here. Yeah, nice. Doesn't. The problem, though, is that I actually just lost Pelipper, right? And with Pelipper gone, that might mean that... I mean, it means that if they have Torkoal in the back, I can't change the weather easily anymore. So, I didn't mind making that prediction because I think most players would protect in that situation, and their play gets punished really heavily by the obvious play of Jet Punch plus Wild Charge. But it's a good read by them, and they end up getting, yeah, definitely beneficial end of that trade-off. The reality, though, is even if they have Torkoal in the back, like, these two are still fairly powerful, and I still have a Terra to use as well, right? So the amount of priority I have against Flutter Mane is good. I eliminated one of the more annoying Pokemon for Iron Bundle to go up against with the Baxcalibur. Sorry, with the Wild Charge. We did get a critical hit there, so if they were, like, super bulky bundle, that may have mattered. Roaring Moon comes out, okay. Expect booster energy on Roaring Moon, likely, right? No booster energy, huh? Okay, it's probably best to Poison Terra here. I'm thinking just Poison Terra, Glaive Rush, and just Jet Punch. They could switch in Torkoal for either slot right now, so yeah, Flutter Mane switches into Torkoal. Okay. I just made the assumption to be Torkoal there, by the way. Like, it just makes the most sense. Is it attack or speed? Probably attack, right? Okay. Interesting. They're not going for a Terra with Roaring Moon. Really? What are you doing then? It's got to be a Protect then, right? If they're just attacking here without Terraing, I think I just win the game. Oh, they're just attacking. Okay, well, I said I win the game, but let's actually see if I win the game. Yeah, they just go for Breaking Swipe. Oh, that's not a good crit. That crit's really concerning, actually. Breaking Swipe was a really cool option, by the way, there. Huh. Special attack boost. Yeah, I mean, I am at -1 with both Pokemon right now, so... I can double protect this turn, I think, to scout out for what they want to do. And bait out a Protect from Flutter Mane. And bait out a Terra. Yep, there's a Terra. Yeah, basically the problem with them getting the crit onto my, what? Fighting! I was like, I've never seen that Terra before. Interesting. Okay. Palafin protects. Excalibur. Does Flutter Mane even have Protect? Like, that's two opportunities I had to potentially protect and it didn't. Went for Mystical Fire. And Body Press. So this is defensive Torkoal, isn't it? Tell you what, then given that, like, I don't think Heat Wave KOs, so what I can do is actually Ice Shard and Haze to get rid of this attack drop on Baxcalibur. Okay, Flutter Mane doesn't protect. Maybe it just doesn't have protect, because that's 3 different times I thought it made sense for it to protect and it never did. I don't know if Haze was the right play there. Maybe Wave Crash and Glaive Rush is just stronger. Oh, interesting. They go for Yawn. Oh, that is scary. Okay, two turns of Sunlight. They have to protect here. Wait, if I Glaive Rush and they protect, do they do more damage next turn? I would think so, right? Even if the Glaive Rush didn't actually go off. That's actually a pretty important mechanic. I'm gonna Ice Cold Crash instead then. And Wave Crash. Yeah, they protected. That was a good yawn. That was a very nice yawn. If I just Wave Crash then, I would have done more damage and then I could have hazed earlier. Yeah, this is where, like, with the crit onto the Palafin, it's more likely I'll go down. So it might boil down to how quickly I wake up. I'm down to Ice Cold Crash. The question here is whether or not I should just protect, because it is the last turn of Sun, right? So then my Wave Crash do more damage. The honest question here is they might read Palafin to protect and then just straight up body press into Baxcalibur. I honestly kind of want to Wave Crash here because I think protecting Palafin's the obvious play. They should be a super defensive Torkoal. And it's just Wave Crash would straight up win me the game here if they end up trying to body press Baxcalibur, so I'm gonna just go for Wave Crash. Okay. Citrus Berry, yeah. Whew. This Torkoal, really, really strong defensively. Turn 1 asleep. Flamethrower. Oh. Well, that just definitely wins me the game then, right? With no more Sunlight. Especially because Thermal Exchange is activated as well. Oh, I should be clicking Glaive Rush. But that last turn it didn't matter. And just Wave Crash again. They win off a 3-turn sleep. Okay, never mind. Wave Crash just gets the KO. Nice. That's why I went for a Wave Crash, right? I was like, if you do target Baxcalibur, I was expecting Body Press. I don't actually know what's stronger between Body Press and Flamethrower for them there, but yeah. That Torkoal was a doozy. That was actually really scary to fight through, but in the end, it ended up being okay. I think this game was interesting where we utilize Haze to get rid of our own drops rather than to get rid of, like, our opponent's side of the field. But yeah, I haven't... Like, Yawn Body Press... Torkoal was something that existed throughout like Sword and Shield. I just didn't really expect to see it here, and then the Fighting Terra definitely caught me off guard as well. I'm just really curious about that Flutter Mane, whether or not it had Protect, because yeah, like I would have expected it to Protect when I switched out into Pelipper. I would have expected it to Protect the first turn when I had Baxcalibur and the Palafin next to each other, and then I would have expected to Protect the next turn as well, but it never went for it, so maybe it just didn't have it. Could be like Dazzling Gleam, Shadow Ball, Trick Room, Imprison with that set, especially because it was a bulkier booster energy, like plus special attack set as well. But yeah, I think the main thing is I was curious also about the Roaring Moons Terra, because if it had Flying Terra, then I don't KO with Glaive Rush, especially after the Breaking Swipe, and that might have been enough for my opponent to win the game. So Torkoal Terraing was a little bit less scary relative to the Roaring Moon Terraing. I think a Roaring Moon Terra there would be substantially more concerning for me. Alright, we've got Houndstone here. I actually featured Houndstone in a video. If you want to see me try it out, check it out down in the description below. I think Houndstone is actually really underrated, and that team opened my eyes to the potential that it has. So, let's see how I want to beat this. Houndstone's actually really concerning since we're such a physical team, and I can't flinch it with Fake Out from Iron Hands, and Will-O-Wisp is just really good into our whole team. I, for that reason, actually want to prioritize Dragonite in this matchup because it can Ice Spinner to get rid of Inity Psychic Terrain, and it can also have the Lum Berry against Houndstone. Moongus, I think, is actually worth considering here for a Spore. I think Amoonguss is the one Pokemon I probably feel least comfortable bringing generally, but it's so good on this team. I feel like I'm just kind of conditioned a little bit more towards the offense that exists on the team. I'm trying to figure out who to drop. I like Dragonite and Palafin. Every time I see an Iron Bundle, I just want to bring Baxcalibur. And then it's between Iron Hands and Pelipper here. Pelipper feels better. Because if you look at their team, their only answer into the Palafin really is going to be the Iron Bundle. And so if Iron Bundle is eliminated, then Palafin can have a field day. That's kind of how I'm thinking about it. Volcarona and Bundle. Booster energy. Okay, Iron Hands plus the Dragonite would have crushed it as a lead here, but it's okay. I think generally I'm okay going for... Do I want to commit Terra immediately? Because basically Dragonite's just really weak if I don't Terra here. Like, I'm actually thinking just straight up go for Terra Blast into Volcarona, and then pivot Palafin out, but they might Terra Volcarona defensively. Like, I want to Terra Blast and straight up pivot out into Baxcalibur here, because then Baxcalibur can just threaten the Iron Bundle with the one-hit KO. But, I don't know, it could be Protect Volcarona, like Freeze Dry or Icy Wind here on turn 1. Okay, we Terra first. And if we eliminate Volcarona immediately... I mean, I guess Volk isn't really that much of a problem for anything on this team. But I like the idea of potentially being able to one-hit KO it, because I don't expect the, you know, Terra Blast to KO Bundle. Okay, it is just Icy Wind. Honestly, that's fine, though. That makes me think a Will-O-Wisp is coming out right now, though. Oh, it's Quiver Dance. That's really good for us. Nice. Okay. Unless you're Focus Sash, this should just get a knockout. Beautiful. Volcarona's down. Okay. Now what? I can Glaive Rush, pressure into Bundle. Houndstone comes out. Houndstone's pretty scary. Especially with Will-O-Wisp pressure. I can reset the speed drops, but I don't really think that's super relevant here right now. Assuming Tyranitar is their last one, Pelipper and Palafin is poised for success right now if we KO the Bundle. I think here I don't mind protecting to scout out for what they want to do. Okay, they switch out. Into Tyranitar? Yeah, so that's interesting because I can now pivot into Pelipper and win the Weather War. I do have to be pretty careful about a late game Iron Bundle sweep, I think. Because Freeze Dry is actually really good from it on top of my entire team right now. Will-O-Wisp into Dragonite. Okay, so the Lum Berry helps here, but I could have played a little bit more offensively this last turn. I didn't really think they'd actually switch in the Tyranitar though, because I didn't think it was necessary for them. But now the pressure of Rock Slide is actually terrible for me. I think here though, I might just go for Terra Blast and the Glaive Rush onto Houndstone. I should have considered switching a little bit more. Like, this is actually a really bad position for me now. That was nicely done by my opponent. I guess, yeah, like, the switch into Tyranitar is actually less for Houndstone and more to be in a better offensive position for my opponent's POV. No, they just go for Last Respects here, though. Okay, onto Baxcalibur. And Rock Slide. Does that KO Dragonite? It doesn't. So now it's a free switching into Palafin for me. No flinch, which is huge. Terra Blast into the Houndstone. Are you Citrus Berry? No. So I can go into Palafin now. Whew, okay, with Palafin. The obvious play for me to make right now is to pivot into Pelipper. And Jet Punch into either. If I were my opponent, I honestly would protect Houndstone, pivot Tyranitar out into Bundle right now. Even if they do that, it's not the end of the world, right? And if they... I mean, they have to... Like, you have to switch Tyranitar here, right? I don't know. Was it ever worth making a read and not switching out here? I just... Like, Dragonite's not really doing much for me at this point currently. It's not that valuable to Tyranitar or Iron Bundle. Also, if Houndstone doesn't have Protect here and we just KO it with Jet Punch, you know, that also is huge. Let's see. They stay in with Bolt, okay. I mean, that's generally a good sign. Tyranitar's the one going for a Terra into Flying. It's fine for now, but probably eating up a Rock Slide then. Good Protect. Well played. Okay, that was a really nice play by my opponent. Wave Crash onto Tyranitar here would have won me the game. But I really thought they would switch out Tyranitar instead of just going for Protect Terra, which is... Like, honestly, my opponent played this game really, really nicely. And they miss a Rock Slide on a Palafin. Okay. Obviously, quite lucky for me. Huh, how fast is Houndstone? Are they going to Will-O-Wisp me? Is Tyranitar going to switch out here? Tailwind plus, like, Jet Punch here is generally my safest play. Yeah, Houndstone switches. I feel like I needed to just make some better predictions in this one, because I had a totally doable matchup here. Oh, Jet Punch actually did a ton there, though, so maybe I'm fine. Because now I can just KO everything with Wave Crash from Palafin. Oh, they missed another Rock Slide. I feel really bad. Given that, then, I think we can actually just Hurricane now. Yeah, I hit 234. Wave Crash should just one-shot T-Tar, right? So I can just Hurricane and Wave... I really wish we could have played this game without the misses, like... Because I honestly thought my opponent played super well, and I think, like, it was still winnable for me even if both Rock Slides hit, but the ball would have been more in my opponent's core, and honestly, they deserve that, given how well they played. I think, like, they needed to get multiple turns correctly. Like, for example, if I just, Wave Crash Tyranitar the turn that it Terra'd, I should win the game, because then I just Jet Punch KO'd the, Houndstone. Yeah, Wave Crash just gets the one-hit KO. The thing is, if Rock Slide had connected, like, Pelipper would have fainted, would have given me a free switch into Dragonite. I can just Terra Blast plus Wave Crash. My question then is whether or not Terra Blast gets the KO onto the bundle, but now Hurricane should just finish things off. Yeah. So, definitely would have been way closer for a game if the Rock Slide's connected. So... I think the main thing is, like, Rock Slide connecting on the Palafin, we'd have less HP. If you connect on Pelipper, then Dragonite comes in, and yeah, I would just Terra Blast into Bundle, and then just Wave Crash into Tyranitar. I think, like, because of that, I was still in a pretty okay spot, but maybe my opponent would play differently if, you know, the first Rock Slide connects, for example. So, yeah. But I think, like, they had to make multiple good turns just to stay in the game, and they found exactly those turns, right? And so I feel like I have a really good matchup here, honestly, and I didn't execute it as well as I probably could have, and then my opponent played really well to keep themselves in the game. And so definitely apologize for those Rock Slide misses. Feels bad. But shout-outs to them for, yeah, making the right plays, especially... Yeah, like having the conviction to staying with Tyranitar, for example, would protect Houndstone and then switch the Houndstone out. Like those are back-to-back good plays from their end. So, yeah. Anyway, that's going to be it for today. Hopefully these battles have opened your eyes to how strong of a team this is. And please watch Gavin's battles from the Oceania International Championships if you want to see the true master at work. But a huge, huge congrats to winning the entire tournament. Huge thank you to him for sharing the team. And I'm looking forward to see how the Series 2 metagame continues to progress and develop as time goes on. Anyway, thanks for joining me, and I'll see you all next time. All right, peace.